Hi folks, this is Ben Ash at BA Guitar Tuition, bringing together another tuition video. In today's video we're going to be looking at the Norwegian black metal band Immortal and their development of guitar style and approach through the early 90s into the present day. And to start off this video I'm going to be having a look at the early period where Demonaz Doom Oculta was the predominant guitarist before Abbath, and looking at some choice examples and also some chord examples with also posture notes, which is going to be a very important point of this lesson. So let's get tuned up and rock on. We'll see you in a bit. Okay, so let's have a look at the setup. The guitar I'm using today is a Chord EVL Z6 with active EMG pickups, the 81 and the 85. It's not absolutely essential to be using the neck pickup, it's all predominantly going to be coming from the bridge pickup, which can have lots of treble and visceral output there. And the string gauge I'm using is 11 to 52, so light to heavy bottoms, so we've actually got a lot of weight on the low end to resonate those chords, gives it a lot of big fat over time, with a slightly jangly top on the treble strings. The amp I'm using today is a Marshall valve state 8080 model, and the settings on the drive are as follows. The gain will be turned up to full, the bass will be set to 3 o'clock, the middle will be set to just peaking around 12 o'clock, treble up full, console up full, and volume set to around 1 o'clock. The reason I've put it to that is with a lot of black metal it's got a lot of dense compression within the guitar tone, and also it's a very bombastic over the top tone, slightly unwieldy, which kind of gives it more roots to its punk aesthetic as well. So you don't want it too clean, you want it nice and dirty. And it's important to obviously have a high amount of gain because it's going to have that really dissonant feel to the chords, which we'll have a look at just in a second. Now the chords we're going to be using are predominantly going to be dyads, and if you don't know what a dyad is, it's something you've actually probably been using for many years if you've been playing a lot of rock music. It's basically a power chord. Now the power chord is basically made up of two main intervals, being your root and your fifth, and what Demonaz used to do was a heavy use of power chords but also other dyads as well. And what we're going to do now is give you a couple of examples of the other dyads that he would actually be using within various compositions. The first example here is an E5 bass power chord on the A string. Taking the image and inverting it, you get the flat third in the dyad going from an E5 into an E minor. Then going back to the previous image, diminishing the fifth, you create the tritone, which is synonymous with blues, rock and heavy metal. Extending the bar, you go back to your traditional E5 power chord, giving a nice thick low overtone with the low fifth. And then dropping the root to the seventh, you invert the chord from an E5 into a B major, which sits below the chord. And then playing the opposing open strings around the E5 creates a nice big full strum. And believe it or not, there is actually a bit of a jazz tinge to some of the arrangements within Immortal's early works as well. And if you don't believe me, check this out. If I base, let's say, a progression, key of F major, and just go through the ever so classic 2-5-1 jazz progression, which sounds a little bit like this. Now you probably think I'm out of my mind actually saying that's got anything to do with black metal. But what we're going to do, we're going to take that same progression of chords, we're going to turn them all into minors, and when I go to my 5th chord, which is going to be here on the 3rd fret of the A string, I'm actually going to diminish that by flattening it down to the 2nd fret, and see if you can hear the difference. And there you go. And all we do is, let's say, put a bit of drive on that, bit of the fast trilling, and away you go. Black metal jazz, easy as that. Before I go on to my final demonstration, what I wanted to talk about was the importance of good form and stance when playing with this material. Because in 1996, Demonaz was tragically diagnosed with acute tendinitis, which actually refrained him from playing a lot of this material. Probably a lot of it was down to the intense use of tremelo picking and also fast chord use. So you've got to really tread with this stuff very, very carefully. Now what I'm going to show you is a couple of things that you can do so that you can actually still play a majority of this material, but you're not going to have so much impact on your arm that you're going to end up with severe RSI injury. So here are a few pointers for myself. One of the first pointers I can put to you is stance with the guitar. I've got myself set up in a classical stance as opposed to the Western stance, which would be on my opposing leg, because it creates a natural angle with the guitar, so I can actually cut across, not forcing an angle with the picking hand, so it keeps it relatively loose, and just cuts through the strings like butter, thus cutting down the impact and resistance of the pick. And also another point to make forward is the use of good, decent picks. Because if you've got any blunt picks that you're using, trying to do this sort of thing, it's not going to cut through the strings. It's going to be a very blunt approach. It's going to slow you down, once again causing more resistance. So the picks I'm using here are the Dunlop style Dovetail Picks, 1mm each, and they tend to actually be really responsive as well to the fingers. You don't actually have to grab them too hard, but you get a nice cut with the string, enables me to actually play all these rhythm styles, whether going from thrash to black metal. Make sure when you're practicing this, you're practicing with a metronome. Very, very important, because the thing is, if you're not gauging it to any kind of rhythmical basis, quite often you actually tend to be playing too fast because you've got the apprehension that you're trying to catch up and chase your tail, which is not going to be productive at all. So make sure when you are practicing, practice with a metronome and go through your various subdivisions. If you want to check out some of the exercises that I recommend, click over here and you'll be taken to an exercise tutorial video that will go through some studies that you can do to help you out with this side of things. And to all you players out there who have probably been playing the style for many years and may be suffering from a couple of potential RSI injuries, the worst thing you can do is try and self-diagnose yourself from going on the internet. The best thing you can do is go see your specialist and get yourself diagnosed, because the thing is, it might not be as serious as you actually assume, and it might just take us a few simple remedies and some regular exercise, drinking plenty of water, simple little things, but they do make quite a difference. But yeah, do get things checked out and get a second set of eyes through a specialist if you feel you need to be. Okay, so that brings us up to the end of my first parter of this Immortal tutorial. Hope you found it insightful. And if there's any other pointers that you want me to go over, please just send me a message in the D-bar, or alternatively, check out my website over here, and I'll be able to get back to you as soon as possible, because really this video is only scratching the surface with this style of music, but I thought it would give a good taster and a bit of a good insight to actually approach playing in the style, but also approach it playing it safely. Really, really important to do. Then the second part is going to be looking at Abbath's approach to guitar, which radically changed the style of the band. Still keeping nuances of the early days, but it was a lot more refined, and that's going to be a pretty fun video to look at. And also I want to put a big shout out to Mark Rudolph, who actually put this idea forward of actually doing an Immortal tutorial video in the first place. It's been a while in the making, but hopefully it's been worth the wait, and hopefully you've all found it pretty insightful and enjoyable as much as I have. But in the meantime, until we see you in part 2, keep rocking folks and stay inspired. Peace out. See you all soon.